going to really make it difficult for Aaron to kind of utilize these automatic modes that he can take advantage of early on in this game.
Yeah, I think synergy is going to be everything, so let's jump right into this match. And I want to see what these leads are going to be, how they're going to maybe pair up against each other, support the Pokemon out, and then bring some devastation to the Pokemon battlefield. Aaron is going to be bringing out the Tyranitar and the Dragapult, whereas it's going to be the Garchomp and the Thundurus on Sierra's side.
Yeah, some nice leads here for Sierra here with the Garchomp instantly putting a lot of pressure onto the Tyranitar, but has to be very wary about the Dragapult that is currently the fastest thing on the field for Aaron. The Thundurus does have the ability to go for the Dynamax, go for an Airstream, but got to worry again about the Tyranitar. It's a little bit of checkmate on both sides of the field where both players have Pokemon that can threaten the opposite side, but they're covering those threats very well, you know. It'll be interesting to see who will Dynamax, and if we do see a Dynamax turn one, I'd imagine something like the Thundurus might switch out here. It doesn't really want to sit in and take Rock Slides, but again, at the same time, it can utilize those big Airstreams. It's not really threatening anything with the electric type that it can offer here, so it might be worth preserving it, like I say, for maybe when that Rain Code does make an appearance later on in this game.
Well, it's just going to be a protect straight away from that Dragapult. Aaron just wanting to protect it from a potential Thunder Wave, and that's exactly what the Thundurus has gone here for, making use of its Prankster ability, having that priority, but it is going to be to no avail. The Garchomp, however, going to also capitalize on the fact that its partner Pokemon is up in the air, isn't going to take any damage from a potential Earthquake, but Tyranitar, on the other hand, is going to take a huge chunk, takes us down into the red, but not enough to pick up a KO, able to go for that Rock Slide in return. Again, not picking up any KO, but doing a huge chunk of damage to that opposing Thundurus. So I think Dragapult, you know, got away really well here, going for that Wise Protect.
Yeah, really nice play there from Sierra as well, instantly putting the pressure on and taking advantage of that Prankster ability on the Thundurus, and it's amazing support because it instantly puts that Dragapult underneath the spear tier of the Garchomp, who we've seen carrying the Life Orb as well, and the amount of damage that it did to that Tyranitar was just phenomenal. Going to be able to pick up the knockout onto that the next turn, so whether Aaron adjusts or not, the Dragapult's still going to be a little bit threatened, you know. It is going to be able to take the Earthquake and maybe return with the Dragon Darts that will do big damage to the Garchomp and Thundurus. So Sierra does have to be a little bit careful all the same, because unless the Earthquake does take it down, then the Dragapult is going to be able to utilize at least something going into this next turn.
That's the thing, Dragapult can often be an offensive Pokemon, or it can be that little bit tricksy, but instead it's just going to jump off the field, and Politoed's going to join the battlefield here, and it's going to be able to reset that weather as well, using its Drizzle ability to bring a little bit of rain. So Aaron's really messing around with the weather sort of environment here in this game, trying to make sure it's where he wants it to be, and Thundurus going to go for that Thunder Wave, this time finding its mark on the Politoed that has switched in. It is going to be paralyzed and have its speed reduced as the Garchomp goes for another one of those powerful Life Orb boosted Earthquakes. Tyranitar, we know, will go down. Politoed able to survive. Looks like it's going to be able to take another one of those as well, but you have to watch out from any electric type moves coming from that Thundurus too. That's something Politoed's not going to appreciate.
No, definitely not. And I think the one thing, if you do see the inclusion of the Ludicolo here, which we are seeing from Aaron, he's got to really worry about that Thunder Wave from the Thundurus, because that going on to the Ludicolo will override the rain, you know. It will override this the swift swim ability, you know. It's going to hit before Ludicolo has a chance to move, and if your Ludicolo is paralyzed, it's not going to be half as, you know, beneficial as if it wasn't. So I don't know if there's a Lumberry there, maybe. You wouldn't have thought so, but if, you know, Aaron can try and get rid of this Thundurus with maybe a Protect on the Ludicolo, maybe a Scald into the Thundurus, that'd be a really nice way to get around the Thundurus and allow the freedom for Ludicolo to kind of really start doing a lot in this match.
I mean, that's the thing, the Ludicolo can apply a lot of pressure here. You know, it doesn't have to worry too much about the Earthquakes, and it can deal some really good damage in return to something like the Garchomp. It is going to have to take that Thunder Wave, like you mentioned there, Lee, and this is now where things can get a little bit interesting with any potential paralysis coming into play, particularly if Rock Slides are also going to throw flinch chances in there too. The Politoed, however, just going to eat its berry, going to regain a little bit of HP. You know, it did take a decent chunk of damage from that Rock Slide, but this is where things get very interesting. Ludicolo able to break through both the flinch chance and the paralysis and go for that Ice Beam, and we know Garchomp is a Pokemon that drops to almost anything ice in any kind of way. It doesn't like ice, basically, Lee. And with a critical hit as well, it's going to be not able to survive that. Will return to the Pokeball, and Ludicolo revealing the little Life Orb on there as well. The Scald as well. Politoed breaking through the flinch and the paralysis and is able to pick up a KO. So a double KO there for Aaron. This is definitely putting the momentum into his favor.
Yeah, I really like the play there where you're not you know, maxing the Ludicolo, which I think a lot of players would have been tempted to in that position, and really preserving that to later on in this game. The paralysis here causing a lot of issues because now Ludicolo, like I said, hasn't got that advantage of the rain, has got obviously the advantage of the water types being boosted, but at the same time you're going to be hit before anything else. You're able to get your attack off, which kind of puts you a little bit on the back foot. But we do know that the Dragapult is in the back. One thing that can come in and really give Salamence and Metagross a hard time. The one thing that you would think here is coming out from maybe Sierra is the Bulldoze weakness policy. Metagross it max and start doing some really big damage to Aaron's side of the field. So he's going to have to kind of plan around this. Maybe get a Scald off with the Politoed into the Metagross is the best way to go forward. But then it's not out of the realms of possibility for Sierra to Dynamax the Salamence as well, who could also have a really good matchup here in front of this Rain pair.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of variables here. You know, the Ludicolo has revealed it's got Ice Beam. That's something the Salamence doesn't want to take. But we sometimes do see Salamence wearing something like an Assault Vest here, so that could reduce some of the damage. And of course, if you Dynamax, as Sierra has done now, you will also get that additional HP boost too. Something like a Max Airstream going down into that Ludicolo as well will certainly not be appreciated. We know it's got the Life Orb there, and that's exactly what is coming out, the Max Airstream into Ludicolo, and it looks like it is enough to pick up the KO, so it no longer has to worry about taking any of these potential ice moves, and it has just removed one of those threats from the field on Aaron's side. The speed boost as well, certainly going to be appreciated. Why not just get an extra speed boost while we're out here? Metagross going to go for that Rock Slide, however. So again, Politoed has that awkward situation where it's got to break through two potential chances to be prevented from going for a move, and it looks like the Rock Slide have found a way.
Yeah, really unfortunate flinch there, because what's going through my head right then is maybe there's a Perish Song coming off that Politoed. Maybe this is the time where you get your Perish Song off. And it's really unfortunate if that was what Aaron was clicking, because the flinch there, obviously a nice play from Sierra, maximizing her, you know, turns and fishing for the flinch and getting it, and really paying off here and putting her in a great position, because with that Airstream boost now that the Salamence has got access to, it's going to be able to outspeed the Dragapult and put a lot of pressure on that side of the field, and Metagross in a position now to pick up the knockout onto the Politoed. So Aaron in a really difficult spot, and it's all down to that thunderous early game, and with those paralysis, the Thunder Waves really making it difficult for maybe the things that Aaron would lean on to start cutting through the threats on Sierra's side of the team. A nearly impossible job.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Lee. Getting the Max Airstream is critical there for Sierra. The speed boost just puts her at such an advantage when that Dragapult that, you know, had already been revealed would rejoin the field. And Aaron has now got it here, still has access to his Dynamax, so going straight onto the Dragapult here. And this is something that we are very familiar to see ever since Dragapult did join us here in Pokemon. It's able to be one of the key Dynamax Pokemon, can go for some really very powerful Max Phantasms. And that's something that the Metagross certainly is not going to appreciate, especially if there is a helping hand boost on that Dragapult. Salamance's going to go for another Max Airstream though, targeting down into that Politoed and just removing it from the field, leaving Aaron with just one remaining Pokemon. It is his Dynamax, he's still got those turns to go through, and depending how much offensive pressure Dragapult can do, this could give Aaron a slight window into trying to come through this game one.
Yeah, if you can target the Salamence here and remove it with that helping hand boost, then you're in a great spot to close this one up.
Ooh.
And it's exactly what we see with that Max Wormwind coming out into the Salamence. Like I say, the helping hand boost there is probably enough to just make sure you get the knockout. And Metagross going to find it very difficult now against this Ghost Dragon-type Dragapult that you've already mentioned, Lou, is one of the most formidable Pokemon that was introduced with the Sword and Shield series.
I mean, we saw that the Metagross was faster, but those Rock Slides, you can't flinch the Dynamax Pokemon, so Dragapult is just going to be sitting in a great position here to go for something like that Max Phantasm, and I don't think Metagross, even if it's able to survive, is going to be able to do anything really to threaten that Dragapult. It is going to go for that Iron Head, do a decent chunk of damage though, takes it below 50% HP, but Dragapult does go for that Max Phantasm straight down into the Metagross and picks up a really solid one-hit KO, so just in those final couple of turns, having access to that late-game Dynamax really turned things around there for Aaron.
Yeah, an incredible end to that. Could be very close at least, and then the game's completely different, you know, so it's fine margins in that one, and makes it even more exciting going into a game 2, Lou.
Well, let's jump right into that game 2 now, and you know, Sierra came out so strong in game 1, had excellent synergy with that Thundurus and the Dragapult, and I wonder if we're going to see those same leads jumping out in action. It's going to be a change up there for Aaron. We've got that Tyranitar and the Comfey here on the field, but Sierra's sticking with a combination of the Thundurus and the Garchomp, but I love this so much, because although you can't use Prankster against something like the Tyranitar, the Garchomp has a pretty nice way of dealing with it with those powerful Earthquakes.
Yeah, and we saw from game 1 how much damage an Earthquake did from the Garchomp. So, you know, if you are Aaron, you've got to be very wary about that. Tyranitar, one of those Pokemon I'm not too worried about getting paralyzed, you know. I would much prefer that than getting one of the maybe other status conditions that it's prone to. And the Comfey next to the Tyranitar is really nice, because you're going to be able to maybe activate a weakness policy. You can attack the Garchomp for good damage with Triage, Draining Kiss, and you can also support the Tyranitar and top up that health if you need to with that floral healing that we know that Comfey commonly carries. So Tyranitar, great Pokemon here, especially if it clicks that Dynamax button now and reduces the damage from the Earthquake potentially coming out from the Garchomp, which we know did so much work in that first game.
Yeah, exactly. It needs that extra kind of HP from the Dynamax, but no Dynamax here. Sierra does manage to switch in the Gastrodon here. The Garchomp, however, going to go straight for the Rock Slide. No Earthquake in this situation. Deals a decent amount of chip to both of the opposing Pokemon on Aaron's side of the field. But Tyranitar breaking through and goes for a Helping Hand boosted Rock Slide of its own. Again, not going to be dealing a phenomenal amount of damage, but the amount of games that we've seen, Lee, where sometimes the chip damage can be the critical thing in the end, this could be detrimental later on down the line.
Yeah, all very useful, and a great switch there from Sierra, bringing the Gastrodon in to kind of take that Rock Slide that was potentially coming out from the Tyranitar and cover him potentially if the Tyranitar went for the max there, and Aaron making the better play, really, not wanting to go for the Earthquake and activate a weakness policy. He wants to just get, like you say, that chip damage onto it, because it's so imperative in the long kind of game of this match. You know, all the damage counts, and it's all about maybe taking down that Comfey before anything else. You can't ignore the Tyranitar, but it is threatened by the Garchomp right now. If it doesn't Dynamax, an Earthquake will take it out, known from that damage from game 1.
Well, Sierra going to make a bold play here, switches that Gastrodon out and brings the Thundurus back in. Very well called here. The Tyranitar going straight for that Protect. So Thundurus able to get in very safely. And of course, the fact that it's not there on the ground means that it doesn't have to worry about any side damage from this Earthquake. Comfey, however, is going to have to take a decent chunk of damage there, taking it down to almost about a quarter of HP remaining. And Draining Kiss going to connect there onto the opposing Garchomp. Does do a decent chunk. Its Fairy type move is going to be super effective, and Comfey able to regain a little bit of HP, put itself right up above 50%, except Rough Skin comes into play. It's been a long time since I've seen that animation go off there, Lee.
Yeah, Rough Skin taking a little bit of chip damage along with the Sandstream here on the field. And, you know, the interesting thing there was that the Comfey didn't go before the Garchomp. Normally with those draining type moves, Triage will kick in, which is Comfey's ability, one of its abilities, and be able to pick up the knockout here, which changes the game completely, because at this next turn, Aaron would be in a position to actually knock out the Garchomp if that Triage was present, and that protects your Tyranitar to go after the Thundurus. Like we were mentioning earlier on, if you can remove the Garchomp, then the Tyranitar has a pretty easy time. But because of that Triage and not being able to pick up or be present to knock out the Garchomp, it makes things even more difficult for the Tyranitar this next turn, where you could take an Earthquake from the Garchomp, and again, you are in range if you don't go for that Dynamax.
Yeah, it certainly does eliminate an option there for Aaron, but he still has access to his Dynamax, and that's exactly what we're seeing playing out into this turn. It's going to be that Tyranitar going into the Dynamax form, and this is something the Thundurus does have to be careful about. Something like a Max Rockfall here is going to be able to deal a huge chunk of damage, and of course, you cannot use Prankster Moves against the Tyranitar, so Sierra doesn't have a way of slowing it down at this stage. Garchomp just going to go straight for the Protect here, doesn't want to take any potential Fairy-type moves from the opposing Comfey, but Thundurus going to go straight for that Thunderbolt into Comfey and just remove it from play anyway, and I really like that play. They're protecting up the Garchomp a little bit, doesn't have to worry, you can remove the Comfey from play here, but it is going to be potentially a little bit of a sacrifice here for the Thundurus. It is going to have to take that Max Rockfall, picks up a very solid KO, and Sierra no longer has access to that Pokemon to have that good synergy with the Earthquakes coming out from the Garchomp.
Yeah, it's going to make it difficult to utilize those moves, and, you know, Garchomp not in the really healthiest of positions where you would want to maybe max it, because that's also an option going into the next turn. You max Garchomp, you go for the max Quake into the Tyranitar, and maybe hope that is enough to pick up the knockout, and especially with the Life Orb boost there, may do. And a really nice shout from you there, Lou, in that previous turn, just mentioning again that, you know, Tyranitar doesn't have to worry about those Thunder Waves because of the Dark typing, and not really affected by that Prankster ability. It is immune to that. So the perfect Pokemon here for Aaron to kind of take advantage of that Thundurus coming onto the field, as well as threatening it. I
mean, Aaron is able to now bring the Dragapult here onto the field, and the one difference on Sierra's side is, you know, there isn't the speed reduction going on at the moment. You know, there aren't any paralyses, Thunder Waves, I guess, being thrown out, lowering the speed of the opposing side of the field. There's no Airstreams, for example, boosting up the speed that way either. So Dragapult is going to be in its element a little bit more to apply a lot of pressure with some of the big damages that it can deal out.
Yeah, and it's not going to have access to Dynamax, which is kind of what we know it for, and being able to get that huge damage. But again, you've got Tyranitar if you are, and to take advantage of the really dominant damage here. And Garchomp's in a bit of an awkward position where it wants to Earthquake, but again, on the other hand, it doesn't, because obviously it means protecting your Metagross, and it means probably activating a weakness policy, which could really hinder the ability for you to kind of go forward in this match. The one thing that Sierra does have is the Metagross, and if that does potentially have a weakness policy itself, then Aaron's got to be the one that's careful about what attacks it hits into that Metagross with.
And of course, Sierra still has access to their Dynamax, and that's exactly why we see a Dynamax Metagross here on the field. It can apply a lot of pressure to the opposing side here, going for some of those powerful max moves. Dragapult going for those Dragon Darts. It would have been nice to have seen a little Dreepy going into the Garchomp, but instead it's going to find its target on one on Metagross and one on that Gastrodon, both of who are going to be able to take that much better than the Garchomp would have had. Tyranitar going for that Max Knuckle though, and this is where things get really interesting. It does a decent amount of chip to the opposing Metagross, but critically will boost up the attack stat on both of Aaron's Pokemon here, and that's something Sierra has to bear in mind and try and find a way to eliminate the threat on Aaron's side. That Max Steel Spike, however, going to go into that Tyranitar, do a decent amount of damage, and also, you know, in face of an attack stat being boosted on the opposing side, Sierra's now able to boost up the defense on her side of the field.
Yeah, like you were saying, Lou, she needs to do something about these attack boosts, and she's done exactly that with the Max Steel Spike and mitigating those attack boosts by getting that, the defense boost there, and doing some nice damage in the process to that Tyranitar. The Gastrodon not in a bad spot, but the Dragapult is something that you're going to have to be very wary of going into this next turn with that +1 in attack. It's going to be hitting very hard, and if it goes for a Phantom Force or something, and that allows Tyranitar to maybe get the damage it needs onto Metagross for something like Dragapult to kind of clean it up with that following turn with the Phantom Force, that could be a little bit problematic for her going forward.
And Gastrodon as well, it can be a Pokemon of many moves, and sometimes it's really hard to kind of narrow down which 4 you want. But if it is carrying something like an Ice-type move as well, that can be a really great threat against the opposing Dragapult. But Dragapult and Tyranitar actually going straight on the defensive here from Aaron, just wants to maybe stall out one of these max turns. And the Max Steel Spike was indeed going into the Max Guard, so it won't even be able to do any chip damage or get that defense boost on Sierra's side. Gastrodon, however, is able to utilize this opportunity and recover its HP right back up to full.
Yeah, and it's a nice turn there to mitigate at least one turn of Steel Spikes to prevent those defense boosts even more, because Metagross, as we know, is a very defensively built Pokemon anyway, so further boosting that defense stat against physical attackers that Aaron's got is going to make things very difficult. So a nice turn to kind of stall out not only the Dynamax turns, but also mitigate some additional boosts there, especially onto the Gastrodon. It has got that kind of free recovery there, and Sierra really taking advantage of potentially some stalling opportunities there from Aaron and making sure that she's getting the most out of that turn. And Gastrodon really now back in a great position. Like you say, if it's got some moves that it can attack potentially Dragapult with, like an ice type attack, it could do some real work going forward in this match. Tyranitar needs to be careful as well, because it's very close to being knocked out, and anything from either of these two, the Metagross or the Gastrodon, will be able to pick up the knockout here onto it.
Well, the Dragon Darts coming out from the Dragapult, going to be able to connect onto the opposing side again, not dealing too much damage to the opposing Metagross or to the Gastrodon either, but you have to chip away when you know that it's got access to recover. The Assurance, however, going to be able to follow off into the opposing Metagross. That's certainly going to deal a lot more damage and activate the weakness policy while the Metagross is still to move. Goes for that Max Steel Spike thanks to the boost as well, going to deal even more damage. Not that it really needed it with the low HP that Tyranitar had, but it just guarantees a KO either way. It means Metagross can be even more assured and will be able to get that defense boost up once again on Sierra's side of the field. Gastrodon is going to be appreciating that for sure, as it also goes for an Acid Armor. So Gastrodon making sure that it is here to stay the rest of this game too here. The defense really skyrocketing there for the Gastrodon.
Yeah, the Acid Armor there, really interesting and nice play as well, especially when, the Gastrodon sees a Politoed come onto the field for Aaron. It's thinking, well, this game just got a little bit easier, knowing that the Storm Drain's there as well, and the Dragapult now behind the Acid, the Acid Armor are going to really make that Dragapult its life difficult. Like, it's not going to be able to get the damage onto the Gastrodon now that it really needs to, or we know it for. The Metagross still, you know, has to be careful around the Dragapult. It can go for Phantom Force, and potentially there could be a Perish Song that could come out here, but it's not really going to fall into Aaron's favor to go for that now. He needs to remove something before clicking that button, if he has got access to it, because obviously Sierra's still got 3 Pokemon left, and there is a Garchomp lurking in the back.
Yeah, the Gastrodon really is key here, and I think it's wise for Dragapult to kind of get out of the way, avoid any potential Ice Beams coming out here as Metagross goes for the Rock Slide. Dragapult, of course, going to avoid, but so is the Politoed, and Politoed does actually click that Perish Song, so I mean, Perish Song is always such an interesting mechanic to see, and amazing that Dragapult's able to avoid out the way. Gastrodon able to go for that Earth Power as well, doing a little bit of damage to that Politoed, and you can see the Perish counts coming around as well.
Yeah, the Perish Song set there, and like you said, a really nice mechanic there with Dragapult being off the field with that Phantom Force, avoiding the Perish Song, which, you know, it doesn't activate the count there, and Dragapult being safe from that, while everything on Sierra's side of the field is prone to that. On that 3 countdown, after 3 turns, every Pokemon that goes down to 0 will then faint, unfortunately, but because of the Pokemon advantage there that Sierra has got, I think Aaron realizing that, you know, just one switch in that.
Really interesting mind game to go into.
Yeah, and without further ado, Lou, let's get into this Game 3 and see how both players adjust with all this information that we've achieved in Games 1 and Games 2.
Well, a really nice adjustment here from Aaron. You've got the Tyranitar and the Rillaboom on the field. And Rillaboom is certainly a Pokemon that can apply a lot of pressure to that Gastrodon that, you know, was very frustrating for him in that game too. Sierra sticking with the tried and tested combination, though, of the Thundurus and the Garchomp. And I really like this situation here. You know, the Garchomp, again, can apply pressure with something like the Earthquake. But with the grassy terrain on the field, that reduces the damage that Earthquake is able to do.
Yeah, and the inclusion of the Rillaboom here is a really nice play from Aaron. It gives them fake-out support, allows him to disrupt things like the Thundurus, the Garchomp here if he decides to go down that route. But the big thing is, like you've mentioned, the grassy terrain, reducing that power of the Earthquake. You know, it's going to be nowhere near as powerful with the grassy terrain in effect on the field, and really hinders the ability of Garchomp to function like it did in the previous 2 games. So it'll be interesting to see if Aaron keeps it on the field or whether he switches it out for something in the back. Sierra, sorry, switches out for something in the back. But if she's got the Gastrodon again, it makes things very difficult to bring it with the Rillaboom and that grassy guide present on the field for Aaron.
Well, she certainly makes a switch, and we've got a Dragon combination out on the field, and that Intimidate going down against both these well-known physical attackers can be critical for Sierra later on the Grassy Glide as well. You know, taking that priority while the Grassy Terrain is in the field, Salament's really going to not mind taking that at all, and it allows the Garchomp to be able to capitalise on this situation here, going for that Swords Dance. Assurance is going to follow up, though, do some more damage to the Salamence. It does take a heavy hit to its HP, but I think the critical thing here is you're lowering the attack of the opposing Pokemon. Your Garchomp is able to get its attack up to a really pressurizing situation here, and Sierra definitely has, you know, the advantage here with that Garchomp being able to apply a lot of pressure, particularly if she maybe wants to even Dynamax it.
Yeah, taking away the disadvantage of the grassy terrain and the opportunity to go for the Swords Dance there was a really key turn, you know. Now, like you say, if you want to go for the Dynamax, you don't really care about the grassy terrain. You can go for those Max Quakes into the Tyranitar on the +2 after the Swords Dance. It's going to be more than enough to really pick up the knockout onto the Tyranitar, or even, you know, a Max Wormwind into the Rillaboom. It's not going to enjoy taking an attack like that, and the additional attack drops from Sierra's side of the field with a combination like that could be really useful to slow down the physical setters on Aaron's side of the field. Salament's proven again why it's good in this combination. You know, the double dragon there with that Intimidate really making things a little bit more difficult for Aaron's side to gain and then build that momentum that he was doing so well in the previous games.
And I like this play here by Sierra. You're putting the Salamence in the back. Although it doesn't have a lot of HP, you can then Intimidate later on in the game. Rock Slide manages to connect on both the opposing Pokemon. You can see the amount of damage it's able to deal. You know, Tyranitar can normally take those all day long, and it does almost 50% to it. Unfortunately, Thundurus is going to have to take a Rock Slide in return, but thanks to the Intimidate drop there, going to be able to survive. And, you know, it's going to be interesting if that little bit of chip damage as well is going to put it below 50% HP.
Yeah, the nice thing there about getting the Thundurus back onto the field, you're not only preserving your Intimidate with the Salamence for later on in this game, but you're bringing the Thundurus onto the field as that Ludicolo comes onto the field for Aaron. And again, you've got access to that Thunder Wave that can really slow down and make things very difficult for that Ludicolo to operate. We've seen already how much that Rock Slide from the Garchomp has just done to the Ludicolo, kind of made it very difficult to choose that as your option of a Dynamax Pokemon, especially with the inclusion of Thundurus there, with the threat of the Thunder Wave. So Garchomp being a very, very disruptive Pokemon right now. Got to be a little bit careful with it, but if, you know, Sierra, you've got the opportunity to go for that Dynamax at any time you want and really take advantage of these Sword Stance turns that you got earlier on in this game.
Well, going to be no switches here, but a little bit of defensive play there from Aaron onto that Tyranitar. It is going to be able to not take any damage from this Rock Slide of the Garchomp. However, Ludicolo, not so nimble, not able to dodge out of the way, and Sierra is going to be able to pick up a really solid KO there against the Ludicolo, a Pokemon that could apply a lot of pressure to some of the Pokemon choices she has on her team. Thunderbolt going to go straight into that Protect, so Tyranitar able to hang on, but my question to you, Lee, is what on earth can Aaron do to stop this Garchomp?
Yeah, I mean, it seems very difficult at this point. You maybe want to look at potentially maxing your Tyranitar, but even at that point, if the Garchomp maxes at the same time, the Max Quake that you're going to get and take in that turn, it's probably too much to really take advantage of the Tyranitar. Maybe you get a Weakness Policy activate. I don't know if that would be enough to really get rid of the Garchomp. It's already such a very well defensively built and offensively built Pokemon. If you decide to go down that Dynamax route with the Garchomp, we've already seen the Comfey. Aaron hasn't brought it maybe to this battle. We haven't seen it yet, but you know, it's not really an option there. The one thing that he has got is this Dragapult, which comes onto the field now, and it's still got to worry about the Thunder Wave support that this Thundurus is providing. So you've got to protect the Dragapult, get rid of the Thundurus, get rid of that threat, and then use Dragapult to deal with the Garchomp almost.
I mean, that's the thing. Dragapult certainly has the potential to try and do some good damage against this Garchomp, remove it from the field with something like a Max Phantasmal. Even those Dragon Darts, you know, they are going to deal a decent chunk of damage. But the problem you've got, like you mentioned there, Lee, that Thunder Wave can connect across the Dragapult, lower the speed, and that just does leave the Garchomp free to start going for some really strong damage. Both of our trainers as well do still have access to their Dynamax, and if Sierra did want to go for something like that Max Wyrmwind on her Dragapult and try and on her Garchomp, sorry, and try and target down into the opposing Dragapult, that's going to be dealing a phenomenal amount of damage. And Aaron wants to switch things up here, brings the Rillaboom back here onto the field, this time unintimidated, as Dragapult does just go defensive and go straight for a Protect.
Yeah, it's a nice play here, protecting the Dragapult from that potential Thunder Wave, and also getting the Rillaboom onto the field, which the next turn potentially has Fake Out support, which we actually haven't seen yet, but you would assume that it has got to really prevent that Thunder Wave going onto your Dragapult the next turn. Garchomp going to take advantage of just being able to throw out damage, though, from its side of the field, and get a nice big chunk of damage with that Sword Dance Rock Slide onto the Rillaboom, taking it just below 50% health.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting kind of key mechanics here going on as well. That grassy terrain regaining a little bit of HP on the Pokemon who obviously are grounded onto the grass as well. But the sand activating first of all, and you know, you saw it chip that Rillaboom down to below 50% before the grassy terrain could activate as well. That could be a critical calculation for Sierra to bear in mind.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this next turn is a tricky one, because if you haven't got Protect on Thundurus, then you are prone to potentially going down here, you know. You could, Dragapult could go for the Max Wyrmwind into the Thundurus, double up in that slot with a Fake Out, prevent it from getting the Thunder Wave off, reduce the attack damage on the Garchomp, at least by one stage, and potentially that would be enough to take maybe a Max Wyrmwind in return. And because you've got something like Clear Body on the Dragapult, you aren't taking those attack drops because of the ability there, so it makes things very difficult quite quickly. Sierra going to have to try and maybe reposition the Thundurus later on in this game if she is threatened from that potential Fake Out play.
Yeah, it's one of the things that makes Dragapult so strong, not taking any of those Intimidates. But it's going to be the Dynamax here for Aaron. Looks like it is indeed going to be that Dragapult. And I think this is a good option for him, making sure that you do have a Pokemon that's going to be able to, you know, if it's able to connect, remove the Garchomp here from play. You know, something like the Paralysis could come into effect here, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that Thunder Wave going straight into the Dragapult. It's exactly what Sierra has opted to do, and this is where things can get very, very dicey. There's no Dynamax on the opposing side. It's going to be the Rock Slide coming out from that opposing Garchomp, and gets a critical hit as well on the Tyranitar, removing it from play.
Yeah, and taking down the Tyranitar is a nice play. It protects the Thundurus a little bit more, but the Thundurus now has kind of done its job, where it's got that the Thunder Wave into the Dragapult, you know, being able to paralyze it. Aaron's doing everything right and trying to mitigate that paralysis with the max airstream, getting another speed boost there, but it's very difficult, and that Garchomp's still very threatening in his position, you know. If it does decide to go for that max at any point, it's got the potential to pick up the knockout onto the Dragapult, but got to be wary. Obviously the Rillaboom's still in the back to come in for Aaron and can, you know, put on some pressure with something like the Grassy Glide, but things looking a little bit more tricky now for Aaron to close this one out, whereas Sierra feels like she's got all the momentum kind of still behind her here.
Yeah, exactly, and it was a perfect time there for Rillaboom to rejoin the field. You know, the grassy terrain had gone away. Rillaboom now has the opportunity to reset it and just try its best to keep those earthquakes at bay a little bit longer. It can, of course, like you say, apply some pressure with something like a Fake Out or a Grassy Glide. You know, that's something that Aaron can do here while it's unintimidated. But we know that Sierra does have access to that Salamence potentially in the back. It could come forward. It could try and get that Intimidate off onto the Rillaboom once again.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really... Yeah, it's a nice option because obviously it resists the Grassy Glide that could potentially come out into the Thundurus or a Fake Out into that slot. And the Intimidate's always going to be useful into the Rillaboom, especially for the late game, depending on what you've got in the back if you are Sierra. But I think the big thing here is trying to utilize your Garchomp now. Make sure that you are taking advantage of that the attack boost and obviously the speed advantage that you've got going into this next turn.
Well, Fake Out goes straight into the Thundurus. The Garchomp is able to go for the Rock Slide, but does actually avoid both of the Pokemon on Aaron's side of the field. But Dragapult not able to capitalize. It's paralyzed, Lee. So much going on in that turn.
Yeah, so much going on and not really much as well at the same time. The double Rock Slide miss and the paralysis there and the Dragapult kind of just were back to kind of square one, except there's no Fake Out going into this next turn. The big thing here would be Sierra probably not got that Dragon type attack on the Garchomp, you know, with the Earthquake, with the Rock Slide, the Sword Stance, you know, opting for that kind of coverage rather than the Dragon type coverage, because I think otherwise you would have probably maxed it before now, so it makes more sense for why you're just trying to utilize Garchomp as best as possible now before it goes down to make room for something else to come in the late game and stall out these Dragapult max turns as well.
Yes, and of course we haven't seen Sierra's fourth and final Pokemon either. Garchomp will fall victim to the Grassy Glide. Rillaboom is going to have to take a little bit of rough skin damage in retaliation as well, but it does give Sierra the opportunity now to bring in a Pokemon from the back and try and keep the momentum going on her side of the field. Thundurus is going to also fall victim to the Max Phantasm, so you know, really good there from Aaron being able to pick up the solid KO, but the only interesting thing is due to the fact that both Pokemon have gone down, you don't get that secondary benefit of kind of the defense drop from that Max Phantasm, so that does give Sierra a little bit of an insight coming in with the Salamence and a partner Pokemon in the back, but that Salamence is at really low HP there, Lee.
Yeah, really low HP, but I think the Intimidate's probably going to be the most beneficial thing here to allow it to take potentially a Grassy Glide from that grassy terrain boosted attack from the Rillaboom. You know, it's probably got enough HP, especially with its Dragon type, to be able to take that. It'll be able to outspeed the opposing Dragapult as well, and potentially get that Bulldoze combination going with the weakness policy on the Metagross, and from there it's very difficult because Aaron has already used these max turns and Sierra really been playing this perfectly patiently, you know, waiting to this perfect moment, setting everything up, utilizing the Garchomp, and then in this position now where she can potentially go for a Bulldoze and potentially get the Metagross maxed and just start cutting through Aaron's side of the field.
I mean, we see it time and time again when that late game Dynamax can come through so clutch, and Sierra is going for it here. I believe this is going on to that Metagross, so it allows it to have that extra HP. Again, Metagross, the Pokemon, doesn't want to take any of these Ghost type attacks, and that's where Sierra has perfectly set things up the way that she wants it. That Dragapult speed is being hindered by the paralysis there. It does allow that little bit of insight to try and pick up a KO against it, and having the extra HP as well due to the Dynamax could come in beneficial. Rillaboom is going to fall victim to the Air Slash as well that came out from that opposing Salamence, leaving Aaron with just one Pokemon remaining. It is able to dash off the field with the Phantom Force, but as soon as it reappears, it's going to be the prime target for both of Sierra's Pokemon.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like, you avoid the attack this turn, but the next turn you know you're not going to be able to pick up the knockout onto the Metagross, and you're going to take a lot of damage in return, and potentially this game is already over. I think Sierra's, like we've said, kind of set up this end game position really well, where the Metagross is just in a phenomenal position, and I almost like not going for the Bulldoze there, where you're just utilizing the offensive pressure of the Salamence just to get rid of the Rillaboom while you've got the opportunity to, not messing around, just going for what you need to do to close this game up as best as possible, and that's what we're seeing here. Like you say, the Dragapult able to avoid at least an attack for one turn, but you know, it is only one turn, and now it's kind of staring down the barrel at the Metagross, hitting it with a big max steel spike to close this one up.
Yeah, exactly. And Salaman's going for that air slash. Of course, Dragapult is able to avoid. It doesn't get paralyzed, though. It's able to come through and deal a good chunk of damage to that opposing Metagross with a cheeky critical hit to boot. But Metagross, I think, is going to have the last laugh here, able to activate its own weakness policy. And with Dragapult back on the field, that max steel spike coming right down, going to be able to connect onto its target, do a huge chunk of damage, and pick up the KO, meaning that Sierra Hunter is our Caster Showdown Color Battle Champion.
Blue is victorious here, but no, massive congratulations to Sierra. She played that one phenomenally.